Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hey everybody, it's Jessa, and I'm back for another episode of the Better Sex Podcast. I so enjoy doing the show, and I'm so appreciative that you're spending some time with me. You know, I pick different topics all the time. Sometimes I do these shows by myself. Lots of times I interview other experts, and it's always an interesting process to decide what to talk about, who to invite, what to cover. I have almost more choices than I can possibly get to. But every once in a while I come back around to a topic because I think it's that important and that pervasive. And this is one of those times. I am talking to Rebecca Scritchfield, and we're back on the topic of body image issues, self-acceptance, self-concept, how this affects sex. It's just so prevalent that people struggle to be in their experience, in their body, open and available sexually when they are struggling with basically judgment, self-loathing, lack of self-confidence about how they look largely. Sometimes other things about their bodies or their functioning or something like that. But we have bought this cultural myth that our weight defines our health, that how we look defines our attractiveness or our worthiness, and it becomes such a destructive, toxic cycle. The more we buy into those ideas and perpetuate those, the more we suffer and the more our sex life suffers. So Rebecca's here. She wrote a book called Body Kindness. She hosts a podcast. She's, a nutritionist and an exercise physiologist, and she runs this healthy at every size kind of counseling practice. But she's just taken on this idea of the diet culture and the messages that we have bought and how much that hinders us. And she's got a real vision and approach for making a different kind of mindset, different kinds of choices from a different kind of place that can free us up to find joy and connection with each other instead of the sort of constant battle between, we're either on the wagon or off the wagon. We're either doing a good job or we're totally failing, like the traps that we get caught in that get so in our way. So that's the topic for today. Back around to yet another perspective and voice about body image, because I really want to help you free those demons, get rid of them, banish them if you can. I hope you enjoy it. So Rebecca, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me.
This is such an important topic for me in terms of body image and self-consciousness and self-confidence for people, because I know it comes up a lot. Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe you could start by just sharing a little bit about your own story and experiences and how you have come into this work.
Sure. So, I am a Washington, D.C. based dietitian and certified exercise physiologist. And so I've got this training and these things that we hear are important for your health, right? Yeah. Eating well, exercise, like the rules, here's the rule, right. But what's very interesting is that if you really think about it, our well-being, the sense of feeling, good physically, but also emotionally, to me, is a much better way of looking at and defining health. And so it's a very radical thing to minimize this idea of that thin is the best and healthiest. Like that, it's hard to do in our culture. Yeah. That really is a diety culture. But so I just want to let listeners know right away that yes, I have these trainings. And of course, I usually get questions of like, tell me what to do to be, right. The healthiest version of myself, or what I do is not good enough. And what I want folks to know is that we do have a power that we don't always try to use, and that we spend a lot of time trying to conform or fit into diet culture. And what I would invite the mindset to be is that we look at culture as a sign of, these are the things you do that make it hard for me to have a good life and a healthy life. And I am not the problem. And I think when we do that, it is really liberating and freeing. And that's very deeply a part of my personal story. I tried my first diet when I was 9 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And and that might seem horrible. I've had clients as young as 9 who I've been able to help get diagnosed with eating disorders. And on average, most kids will try their first diet by the age of 10. And
wow.
I don't know if you heard about the Weight Watchers has an app for kids now, a dieting app for kids.
No, I did not know that.
Oh God, it's awful. It's awful. But it's called Curbo, like curb your appetite.
Okay.
And what they say is, oh, this isn't a diet. It's to help overweight kids eat better. And the stuff it does, it tells you 2% milk is a red light food. Almonds are a red light food. Just even these things that I want my kids to eat because there's good nutrients. I mean, forget, because we do need to figure out, how does cake fit into our life in a way that's not good food, good person, bad person. And so as I digress with that, I think that what's important for us to realize is stop and examine, who first told us what to even think about our bodies? And when I was a 9-year-old girl, on the one hand, I thought it was fascinating that I had this body that my heart was going to beat until it stopped. So I had this attachment to this idea of taking care of my body. But the way that I learned what you did, it was through the magazines, before the internet was a real thing. Right.
I remember.
But and all the rules. And so here I was thinking that I was doing good by taking care of my health. But I was getting these messages about long and lean legs. And I would look down. It was like, I don't have long, lean legs. I have short, stocky legs. But so I was a problem, and just all this stuff. And really the mistakes I made when I was younger was that I was trying to be healthy, but I was getting the wrong message. And we're still giving the wrong message today. As a mom of 2 young girls myself, I am constantly on alert. I call it please don't screw up my kids. Who do I have to fight, argue with, write a letter to, or what? Because somebody's going to do or say something that is really wrong. So the illness is really within our culture. It doesn't mean that we can't change things. Lots of people have too much stress and anxiety, and they need my help in changing that. Lots of people don't exercise enough, and they need my help in changing that. Lots of people need help with healthy eating patterns and to get off that diet roller coaster. So, the idea and what I came to learn was that the more I made my body the problem, the sicker and worse I got mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I feel very grateful that I was never diagnosed with an eating disorder, but I sure carried a lot of shame about my body and also everything I did. That late night burrito in college was like, oh, I'm going to have to make up for this tomorrow. I mean, we shouldn't be thinking in terms of earning food and all that, but yet we've got this broken record. And so I wish I could say that my training shifted course for me, but my training actually made it worse. It kind of validated that there were health reasons why we should single out overweight people. And I'm using air quotes for that because it's a language that we use.
Right.
But it's over what weight? We have size diversity is what I came to know. But even in the trainings, you learn that body oppression. There are good bodies and bad bodies. There are worthy bodies and unworthy bodies. And it really, I talk a little bit about it in my book, Body Kindness, but my diet rock bottom was a mix of realizing my mom's own health concerns that came to pass after years of chronic dieting and actually big fluctuations in yo-yo weight. And it turned out that she actually had years of undiagnosed depression, and she was medicating and soothing with food.
Huh.
And then her makeup window is like, oh, I'm going to lose the weight and then I'll be happy. And so it was very personal, but also in my own life, I was trying to train for races and I was trying to follow the low carb advice, which is for running, you need fuel. So it was backwards. And like, I was miserable. My mom was miserable. But most importantly, my clients were miserable. They were crying about Friday night pizza nights. And I really felt like I was doing harm.
Wow.
And that ultimately was my rock bottom. I was like, I can't ever diet again. And I don't want to ever tell my clients that the way that they can get healthy is by dieting. But it was like, well, what do I do? And eventually that's how body kindness came to be. But it's deeply rooted in intuitive eating, which is really evidence-based. I'm happy to talk more about it, but it's been over 150 studies. And it's also rooted in mindfulness-based positive psychology, which is essentially when you can be present and connected to yourself, you have a sense of knowing what you need, whether it's water, whether it's rest. I've been fighting a cold, so I've been not exercising and like guilt-free, because how would we take care of our friend if they were feeling sick? We wouldn't tell them to go blow it out in the gym.
Right.
So it's like trying to teach ourselves is very rational, but when it comes to ourselves, it's like we freeze. It's like we can't do it because we have a different set of rules for ourselves. And to be honest, there's a lot of systemic reasons. So like people who have less money, they have a harder time on positive self-care habits because we lack resources for people who have less money. And we've got to fix that as a culture. And we just have to understand that we can't tell anything about a person's health based on the way we look. And 9 times out of 10, when clients come to me, there's a lot of similarities in the stories of the things that bother them. But ultimately, they come sit down, even if they say, hey, I really got to do something about this weight. I don't really think that that's what they're asking for. Deep down, it's like they want to be accepted and loved and connected to other humans. And the way that they can earn that, definitely here in the United States, but in other countries as well, the way they earn that is through their fitness and their beauty and their youth. And it can create a lot of pain and suffering in people's lives. And without question, it definitely can harm physical connection and sexual health and well-being as well. So,
well, yeah, I mean, certainly I hear this with my clients a lot, how much body image issues, sort of umbrella, get in the way of people feeling relaxed, being sexual, being open to being sexual. If they're dating with new partners, I mean, that's not my clientele. That's got to get in their way, I imagine, with that. And then even with an established partner, like the health concern, again, maybe in air quotes is one thing, but then there's what our culture teaches is sexually desirable or attractive, right? Yeah. Like we so buy these messages that we're supposed to look like the models or the porn stars.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And even in back to the magazines, right? Please him, make him scream. It's this idea of a performative nature.
Right.
I know that was one of the things that really, intimidated me. And yeah, it took years for me to actually kind of feel like, hey, I'm okay with my sexual health right now. And yeah, it's one of the places where I feel like a deep set of anger. Like I felt like if I could control things, I would somehow, like even it's not just the school's job, but even in schools, some schools, right? They'll teach penis erection, but they never teach clitoris for good feelings. Like,
yeah.
So, we're cut off from that. I think there's a stigma with masturbation. And even in my friends, it wasn't like, I never even felt permission to get that curiosity to just play and practice by myself. Like all through high school, it was just, there was this message of it was dirty. Like you didn't do that. If you did this because you couldn't get a guy to kind of do it for you. And that's so broken. And my girls are only like turning 7 and 6. And we've already had our own body conversations. In fact, the other day, my husband's like, they were playing with their doctor doll. And like, I walked in and the younger sister had her pants down. And he's like, what do we do? So I was like, okay, well, first I'm glad you didn't freak out, but let me ask some questions. And sure enough, they were practicing on a doll and they were practicing with each other. And literally the younger daughter had asked the older daughter, basically, can you take a picture of my vagina? I want to see it. And I'm just like, I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, there were trusting sisters. We taught about, permission and consent and touch, and so we're able to process these things. But the idea of that was a natural curiosity that I want them to understand, so I was like, well, tell me what you noticed about your parts. And they're like, I think they described them as humps with like a line in it. And I was like, yeah, well, that's the vulva. And I was like, and that line is like an entrance to the vagina, and just left it at that. And so again, it's like, I feel like these are little victories I have, is at some point they might notice that certain things feel good. And I just want to be able to describe privacy, clean your hands, and like that, yes, that feels good. And just, I just don't want to mess it up, because I know for a fact that the reason why I spent forever faking orgasms and didn't really respect my own body, even after getting married, like years, I know for a fact the reason was that I never had permission to know my body first. And I never had permission to figure out what felt good, and that it was okay to give it pleasure, and that wasn't wrong or dirty or gross. And so I think it was both ways. My body image made it hard to do those things. Culture made it impossible, that even with a positive body image, if I felt strong or good or beautiful or whatever, I still couldn't. If I couldn't come right away, my body was broken.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I mean, you're so right too, because the cultural, just the sexual complications are there in terms of the freedom to explore our body or accept it, or, our sexual functioning, if it doesn't look like what we were taught or whatever. And then if you're thinking your body's the enemy, or it's ugly, or you've got to distance yourself from it, how in the world are you ever going to have sexual peace and fulfillment?
You're in your mind and hooked on those thoughts, and thoughts you repeat over and over again, they become your beliefs. Like you literally believe things about yourself that lower your self-esteem and your sense of self-worth, because you repeat them over and over and over again without really doing any sort of practices to try to advocate for your well-being, or try to, and it's not a Pollyanna, like, just pretend that everything's fine. But there is actually a way where you can notice unhelpful negative thoughts that don't help you create a better life, and practice like unhooking from those thoughts and remembering and living your values. So even if most women are going to struggle with their body image throughout their lives, but it's about changing how you relate to your body, and what are the boundaries? Like, are you, if you value exploring and developing your sexual health, understand that you might need to do some really difficult body image work to help you get to where you need to go. But that's effort is worth it. And you're certainly not alone in those body image difficulties, that they're deeply, deeply connected.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there tips for how to change that mindset? Like I'm imagining all the people, and I can relate to this, like, oh, it'll be better when, we're sort of always waiting for the day we, get fit or lose the weight, or, feel good about ourselves. As a constant postponement,
Yeah.
How do people even start to make peace with where they are now, much less what they're going to do to potentially change it from a healthier place?
Sure. Well, one of the things that's important to understand, what is the real value and purpose of acceptance? So people get confused that they think that acceptance is like apathy, like it's like giving up. It's like suddenly saying you don't care.
Yeah.
And acceptance really is just acknowledging what is. And so there's a quote, like, the curious paradox is that once I accept myself, then I can change. And so by accepting what is, you're really inviting self-compassion, because you're naming what bothers you, and you're saying it's okay. It's okay to be here right now. What is it that I need next that I have control over? So you might say, I don't like what I see in the mirror, and I really wish I could lose some weight. But the reality of it is, if we had the playbook for making the bodies that they say we all need to want, that would be published, sold, and there would only be one rule. We'd all be following it, because that's the power, the social power that you earn by conforming, which is a second aspect I wanted to highlight, is you can change the way you relate to that. So first accept what is, and then you think about meaningful actions that you can take. And so it might be, you tend to be up at late watching TV because it's your only me time, but you realize that you're really not putting in effort to get some movement in. So you got past the barrier that it has to be an hour, and you're like a 20-minute walk, but you're likely going to do it in the morning. Or, if you're up late, you're not likely going to do it in the morning because you're staying up too late trying to get your me time there. So we all have the same amount of time, but we don't have the same amount of responsibilities. But that's like one example where you might need to make some sort of sacrifice, in that as much as I like this nighttime TV, I need to limit it, because I really want to consistently start my day with a walk or a jog or a DVD I'm going to do at home that's 20 minutes because 20 minutes is better than 0 minutes. And it's this idea that literally your brain learns from that repetitive behavior. So you're going to have all this overwhelm about, oh, I can't be happy until, but it gets in the way of your meaningful action. Whereas if you reduce all the expectations you have to call it successful, your brain learns and grows through repeated action, especially with something like movement. I'd rather somebody choose something that they could do consistently almost every day and feel that it's small and manageable, as in later they can make it harder or longer or whatever. But like, what can you do right now? And that repetition sends reward chemicals to your brain. It is highly motivating. It's likely to lead into a habit. But when you start with that, well, I can't be happy until, or I got to do something about this weight as the focus, that emotional overwhelm you feel leads people into avoidant type behavior.
Right.
But when you start with the acceptance, that is going to lead to an approach type behavior. And I just think it's also important to recognize that it may be true that suppose you consistently do some exercise, that it boosts your mood and helps you sleep and all these really wonderful positive things. But it may be true that somehow society treats you better. Like somebody else, like, I think you look amazing, or just giving you this social power that you didn't get before.
Yeah.
It's an important thing to acknowledge that is something that is out of your control. Like, people earn power when they more closely conform to the culture. So you're actually not lying if you are thinking like, oh, but if I lost weight, people would treat me better. Oh, if I lost weight, this or that would be easier. That could be true because our culture is a problem. The real issue is, why aren't we treating every human with respect, whether they run a marathon or do a Netflix marathon, which my friend Reagan Chastain, who I know, she has the Guinness World Record marathon for heaviest female. And she has a Facebook group called Fit Fatties. And she's like, look, a Netflix marathon and an actual marathon should be morally equivalent activities. And I'm 100% agreeable with that. And it's this idea that you're worthy just as you are and for being born. And it's okay that you want these other things that are going to earn you social power, more muscle tone, and a smaller figure. It's just when you literally believe that is the only way you are ever going to get what you want out of life, that is just so difficult because biology doesn't work that way. We're supposed to gain weight as we age. Things are supposed to fall. They're supposed to get flabbier. Right. So it's better to say the culture is a problem, not me. But you know what? I want to exercise anyway because I have other benefits outside of the appearance that really matter.
So talk to me a little bit about that, because I'm sitting here thinking, if acceptance isn't apathy, the desire for change or health is not necessarily beating yourself up. How do you embrace taking action towards some of these things and decouple it from, wait, I'm bad now. I want to achieve this societal goal of being thin or whatever it is. Well,
that's a great question. And so it can get really confusing for people because like, say you're kind of like, yeah, I'm done with diets. I'm opting out of diet culture. Where's the donuts? Which it makes sense that you want those donuts because you haven't been able to have them for so long. And your mind thinks it's used to, if anything, that sort of screw it donut, which leads to 3 donuts. And then you're going to repent and be like, never again.
Right.
And in body wellness, I call them dead person's gold. I'll never eat donuts again. Like, do not even set those goals. But so you might think that those are going to be the patterns that happen. But the reality of it is you're going to work on healing your relationship to food as you work on this idea that carrots are morally equivalent to carrot cake, that by you looking at your lunch and adding a handful of baby carrots and hummus to whatever you're getting, you might be getting pizza, you might be getting a sandwich, but just this idea of like something small and swift, I could add in this vegetable part right here, right? And that's not, how many points is that? Or good girl, you totally care about your health now. It's that what we're eating isn't a specific symbol of our worthiness. Then, in healing our relationship to food, it's like when we really believe that we can have dessert, it's up to us to decide what, how much, and when, that there are rational choices that we can make based on pleasure and joy. And thinking about health, but not is in the sense of, I mean, literally, the famous books today are We're Not a Diet and elimination books. And they'll literally say every bite of food, it either adds to your health or takes away from your health. Like that's anxiety producing. Like, the reality of it is that we're lucky to be able to afford safe and healthy food, but healthy eating is a pattern, So when I go out for Mexican, I'm having some tortilla chips. Like I want to live my life and enjoy it. And you just don't need all these really rigid rules. So at the end of the day, in this reconciling things is looking for benefits outside of an appearance expectation. So around food, I'll often talk about the importance of having good regular poops, or just really enjoying the taste of it. It's like, when I think about it, if I roast broccoli and add butter and salt, these taste really good. So I don't have to be like, good girl ate the broccoli today, but just like this tastes good. And I know it's part of how I get my vitamins. It helps, with my digestion. It helps me feed my gut. And so I can feel good about this healthy eating pattern. But I don't need to then, if I have a piece of chocolate cake, suddenly feel bad that, oh, well, that wasn't A+ nutrition kind of judgments and shame. So we all have these voices in our head, and it tends to be our monitor as like a perfectionist and a critic. So part of it is, and I can give specific tools if you want, but just like changing how you relate to that voice,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm totally relating to this because I'm still in a place where I swing between the listeners, plug your ears, the fuck it mode, right? Like off the wagon versus no, now I'm back in line with the way I want to be behaving. And that cycle is, it's exhausting. And depending on which part of it I'm in, I'm feeling better about myself or worse about myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jessa here, just taking a quick break. Thanks for listening. Are you interested in being a guest on the show? I'm always looking for people with expertise to share that could enrich other people's sex lives. And I'm also interested in hearing from people who have transformed their own intimate relationship and would want to share their story with my listeners. So if you've got something to contribute to the discussion and want to see about being featured on an upcoming episode, please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, and check out the Be a Guest details. You'll find everything you need there.
Well, one little tip that I would advise, and this comes out of doing what's called IFS, internal family systems, it's also called parts work, is that there is likely a part of you that isn't being heard, that has needs, and those needs aren't being met. And so when that monitor comes out and is like, this is the good girl stuff, it's trying to protect this part that's kind of like exiled, that's not allowed to have a voice or raise a voice. And then at some point, right, that voice, if that voice can come in and be heard, then it's like the monitor can learn to stand down, because it's kind of like a pendulum, perfect behavior, which is really, a lot of it is a lot of restriction. And then boom, this other part comes in. It's like, this is also dangerous. So screw it all and do whatever. And your pendulum's in the other direction. What is really going to build a lot of healing in that is when we find this part of you who is like exiled, whose needs aren't really being met, that is where it's saying the only way to protect that need is to be restrictive with our food or to follow these rules and to lose weight. That it's, yes, it's a cultural message, but there's something else going on.
Give me an example from maybe like one of your clients or something about what one of those parts might be.
So I think that there is like an inner child is a pretty popular one. And when that voice is heard, it's kind of like, but that's not fair, so it might come out sort of in conversation, like that child needs to feel a sense of calm or safety, that it needs love. Unconditional love would be something. And so if you think about it, right, this monitor that's trying to protect this child, that's like, this is the way that you earn love. This is how you earn your goodness. It's trying to help. It's just not doing the right thing because it's really depriving your physical body for what you need, not just for nourishment, but also joy. I mean, food is also a form of pleasure,
Right.
and a variety of foods are. And exercise can be a form of pleasure when it's not about the calorie burn. And so when we're trying rigid control over our body, we're depriving ourselves of tons of pleasure. So that inner child might be like, I just need to feel happy again. I need to feel at peace, and then I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
So those are all types of examples of in doing discussions with parts work that might come out. And then when they can talk, what's really beautiful is that you realize, well, now how do we trust our inner caregivers? And body kindness is like all rooted in the fact that we have an inner caregiver that can be compassionate. We just have to learn how we want to treat ourselves and practice it. And so that's, ultimately this caregiver says, well, here's how we can trust that we don't need these rigid food rules, but a little bit of structure could be helpful. So it could be things like, I don't know many people who truly look forward to meal planning and prepping ahead. And it's like when you're on a diet, it's like, I promise I'll do everything right. Whereas a more flexible approach is like, yes, I'm going to give this some amount of time. I'm going to have veggies on hand that I like, fruits that I like, nuts that I like, but also some easy to heat up meals, like maybe frozen burritos or a frozen pizza that you actually really like, that you can easily balance with a salad, or, balance with any kind of fruit and a vegetable. That it's like, it's okay that we aren't, short order cooks for ourselves. And I am never really amazed, because it happens all the time when I give clients the idea about how we talk about how awesome it is to order takeout. And I'll explain. It's like, yeah, I love Indian food. I was like, but you know what I do? I'll order it. I'll open up a can of chickpeas and I'll chop up some broccoli or something else. And I saute that, rinse the chickpeas, get all that ready. The Indian food comes in. I add that yummy sauce that I'm never going to cook, that none of the jars taste as good.
Right.
And now I have a lot more food. And, just that idea of balance on my plate, where there's chickpeas, the basmati rice that comes with the Indian dish, some of the yummy butter chicken that they made in that sauce, and then also broccoli. It's like, that is actually a really balanced, nutrient-rich plate. And it doesn't matter that it's from takeout. I don't care about the calories or the grams of salt or fat or whatever, because we're not dieting. It's this idea that through some small achievable things, you're able to get that taste and eat that food that you love, while taking a step in nutrition without having to diet. And they're like, well, I never really thought of just adding these components to what I would order and takeout. And so it's things like that, knowing that that's good enough, because you're going to save time. You're going to enjoy the taste of what you're eating, and you're going to be making this effort in nutrition that is enough. And when you get that feel good reward, you connect pleasure to your eating plus an effort to your health and well-being. And that feel-good choice is going to help you spiral up in emotion, which is going to help you lead to another positive feel-good choice. And so a lot of it is like getting rid of that judgment altogether, but going in the direction of choice options that sound like they feel good to you.
Yeah, and I guess this is coming together. I don't know how well I can articulate this, but the idea of making choices from that place of pleasure and joy, and the desire to honor your body in a way without beating yourself up. I have to do this because I look like shit. In those exact actions that drive you towards health is the empowerment to like really accept and love your body.
Right. And so it's being, with that mindfulness of just being present. What is happening that's bothering me? Well, I'm having a lot of negative thoughts about my body. I'm feeling really low, like, I don't deserve XYZ. And then you practice acceptance of saying, it's okay to have those feelings. And gosh, that must really hurt, but it's okay that you feel that way. What is a kind and meaningful choice that you can make right now? Mm-hmm. And it's not, you can't control those thoughts or feelings, but you control how you respond to them. Yeah. And so, it could be something like, what? I know that I don't want to believe that about myself, but I also know that I could work on my hydration. I could make sure I'm drinking my water. I could take a 10-minute walk at my lunch, and you hear, oh, that's not good enough. That's not an hour. But that's what I can do today. That's what I can do right now. And I'm going to listen to a really good audiobook that I like, or some nice instrumental music that I like, to help me regulate my emotion, to help me feel more positive emotions in my day to day. And that is actually a way where no matter what you're thinking and feeling, you could choose a meaningful action to take care of yourself that just feels like a hug, that feels like kindness and compassion. And those choices will lead to things like, today was rough and I really want to open up a bottle of wine and just finish it, but I really don't think I'll appreciate that tomorrow. Maybe I'll make an herbal tea, read a book, and get an early bedtime. I think that is what will be the positive self-care choice right now. And then if you drink, save that wine for a good time with a friend, right? Not to like numb out and sort of soothe with food or drinks or whatnot, right? Because it's really because you didn't want to feel that pain, right? Whereas if you're allowed to be there and say, this pain is real and this hurts and this is hard, but what do you need? How can I care for you right now? And the thing of it is, you don't take care of things you hate. So the harder you are on yourself, the more you're going to retreat. And again, that's the monitor. It's trying to exile you, right? Make you retreat. But then when you are finally aware and awake, it's like, up, and I'm still in the same place. I am stuck. And so that is where body kindness is perfect for you then, because it's not rules based. It's actually values based, and you get to decide your values. I lay out, hey, this is what we need to know about nutrition. Here are the highlights, but just trying to show flexible, healthy eating patterns, not rules. And same thing with movement and, sleep patterns and fun. I will say I have all these spiral ups in there, and one of them is 7 days of self-love. So I did every spiral up prompt, and that was actually, in writing the book, was a big part of my journey into just creating the sexual health that I really wanted for myself. And I'm very much still on that road, but it's much more exciting. Many more orgasms later, it's much more exciting.
So do you have any thoughts? You were talking about sort of thought stopping. We get negative thoughts and we want to replace those. Specifically around sex, being open to sex, if you're still working on this journey of making, accepting your body and embracing this mindset, like what kind of mental techniques have you recommended to clients in terms of having sex in the body they've got, basically?
Yeah. So I would say if you're working on the focus with the partner, make sure you've got a good amount of experience by yourself. So you don't have to have an orgasm to have a good sexual touch with yourself, to just feel good in your body. But it's kind of like, baby steps, I guess. If you can't kind of connect on your own with different toys or techniques or experience or explore, it's going to be really hard to communicate what you're into with a partner. And it's going to be really hard to quiet that mind because it's going to go, 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 go. So I would make sure that you're like, okay, I've got this practice of, I know certain things feel good. So then the next thing that I would say is it would be really great to have a conversation with your partner outside of the bedroom. And this is something that my husband and I went to a sex workshop for, like, book research, right? And I learned it from them, and it was like, outside of the bedroom, just start having a conversation about things you might be into. Like, what do you think of feathers? How do you feel about certain food things? Like, yes to dulce de leche and chocolate sauce, no to whipped cream, but just to have any type of a conversation about things you might be into or open to. And if it's really like, ooh, I'm not sure what I would want to talk about beforehand, then prepare yourself to be able to communicate during the act. Like, yes, that feels good. Like, have something that you feel like you're going to try to say. Expect that your mind is going to be running, right? Yeah. Imagine it's like a broken dial on a radio, right? You can't turn it. So it's like, you suck radio. You can't come with him or her, and it should, exactly. Yeah. Like, your growth, it's just words. They're just words. They're not going to hurt you unless you let them. So they hurt you when you stay hooked on those words. And it's like, yes, you're right, where you're more mindfully attached to what you're saying, what you're hearing in your mind. And those words are just driving you to freeze up. And you could tell it's going to go flat, right? Instead, it's like, notice the words, right? And then remind yourself of your value. I want to be the kind of person who can communicate what I need in the bedroom. So let me be the one who changes a position or who says, try this, or, because you have that experience with some self-pleasure, even something like putting your hand on your clit and rubbing it in a certain way. The thing that I've heard is like over and again is most partners, if they're in the bedroom with you and consent, they want to be there, they're going to find almost everything you do arousing and hot, otherwise they wouldn't be there with you. So it's just, that's really, let that give you a little bit of a confidence. But when you see those thoughts, unhook from them like a fish that will not take that bait. I see you, but my values are to communicate and to touch and to be present in this experience. And the last thing that I would say to that is, do not expect to come. And that was another thing, just understanding that what was a successful encounter, why does it have to end in orgasm?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you don't want one, but what are your expectations? And this is all, as far as I'm concerned, how it's been in my life. It's all been exposure work. So what I've kind of learned about myself is I actually had tons of anxiety about myself and my body and its abilities. I thought it was broken forever. I thought it was always going to be like that. Even to the point where I was like, it wasn't even okay to even seek orgasm, And for me, it was when we were at that sex workshop and we walked down the stairs and we're like, yeah, let's just see what we see. We got some lube, started looking at the toys. I got my first vibrator, like with my husband. And what was so weird about it, I still giggle because it's like, I felt like I was like, a little kid in a shop where I wasn't supposed to be. And the sales folks there, it was like they were talking about baseball cards or packs of gum. And so that was like, oh my gosh, this is me, And of course, that thing sat in the drawer for a good 6 months before I even plugged it in to get the battery juice. But it was like, finally, when I was able to orgasm by myself and just that whole experience, and then just learning so much more about how many women really do need mechanical stimulation, about how, that everybody's different. There's all these other things. And I was just at a different place of acceptance, and the orgasms felt so amazing that I was like, oh, I can accept this deal. I can totally accept this deal. Well, then it just became a communication about how do we include conversation and toys and all those things. And also coming clean, like to my husband about faking it. That was another kind of hard.
Yeah.
Well, it was fine once it was done. It was like ripping off a Band-Aid, but I was like, oh, how do I come clean? And I really just had to communicate. It was much more about my well-being and the expectations than.
Right. Well, and we're back to both of these things interacting in people's sexual experiences, the cultural sexual part about, how does my sexual functioning work? What do I want? What do I enjoy? And then the body image stuff, which is a lot to change in your head. Like it can all be going on for people. So I think the point about don't expect to maybe tackle all of that at the same time.
And try lots of different things. Like find good porn, right? And watch it together. Read erotica together, like, outside under a tree with a picnic, just quietly, but like, or just other fun ways of connecting that might sort of be arousing and also give you that boost of confidence you need in the bedroom. And just knowing that if you're criticizing yourself, because a lot of people, when they really struggle deeply with body image, it's like a total disconnect.
Yeah.
That let yourself complete that experience for whatever is complete to you, including deciding to stop, and then go back to what you were able to do. So if that's a lot more private, go back to that and repeat that, because you might just need more time building positive connections and emotions to your body, and then try again with the partner. Just don't ever give up, because you'll figure it out. It just takes time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I want to give you a minute to talk about, the book and anything else you want to say about where, what you do and where people can find you.
Sure. Yeah. So Body Kindness is available wherever books or audiobooks or ebooks are sold. Most widely available on Amazon. If it's not your local bookstore and you want to support them, absolutely. Just ask them to order it. They'll get it for you. It's divided into 4 parts. So what you do is the first part. It's the biggest part. And it's really all about choice and the power of choice. It even talks about FOMO, like why do we, she's trying that diet. Maybe I should, and why our brain gets a reward even after, just by thinking about the hope that we might get certain results.
Right.
And then I move through choice options into practical ways that we take care of ourselves, not just in food, movement, or sleep, but also fun and joy in life. I always tell people loneliness is worse for you than cupcakes, but we literally have a fun famine. And so that's a big part of our well-being. It can be a big part for why people struggle with emotional eating. They're kind of walking around with this low level, undiagnosed anxiety and worry and self-judgment. And having fun and connecting to others helps us remember our common humanity. We're here to have friends and family and to connect to the world as well. Anyway, part 2 is called How You Feel, and it's really about healing your relationship with all your emotions, including your bad, negative emotions, why they're beneficial, how you can be with your negative emotions, but watch them turn into positive emotions again. So that's where I tackle a lot of challenges and difficulties with emotional eating and specific tools that might help you. And it starts with not dieting, because as long as you're restricting, your body is going to biologically drive you to food again, thankfully. And then part 3 is who you are. And that's where you really learn to set values-driven goals. And then part 4 is called Where You Belong. And ultimately it's the shortest part of the book, but ultimately it's this idea isn't life better when you're not spending all your waking hours on trying to make yourself worthy of this world? And how can we notice engagement in our own lives or communities, or maybe volunteering, just better connecting to nature and the planet? These things actually really matter. They help enhance our sense of meaning in life and our positive well-being. So it takes a while to get there because, again, we're in our heads, but eventually what I want people to know is that health is about the 3 principles of body kindness: love, making choices from love; connect to your body. It's wise, connecting to other people. And then the 3rd pillar is care. And it's no matter what, be fully committed to caring for yourself. And so that's it.
All right. Love it. Well, thank you so much for taking this time to be on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question-and-answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.